Thank you to see you guys again, all folks in the sector, especially for Margaret. You know, distinctively point out that now what the barriers are for achieving the the hepatitis elimination. I'm not going to spend any seconds on the medical issues because you guys are the boss, and you can change what we've been waiting for. We've been what we can't wait for. So the story is all about, I don't want to talk too much about my story. I wanted to share some of the insight that having a comparison 10 years before and now, when we do the World Hepatitis Day campaign. But still, I have to come out as a person living with hepatitis. I was diagnosed with hepatitis B at the age of 2 because of iatrogenic infection in the hospital by blood transmission. And one of the things that I need to address is that back in the 10 years ago, we started to throw ourselves into the community to help with the the hepatitis, for the anti-hepatitis discrimination campaign. And back then, what has changed? I'm going to tell you guys what has changed, what haven't changed, after 10 years. 10 years ago, the infection rate is still very high, but now I'm talking about in the China perspective. We came to a status now at the moment that from the statistic in China, in 2014, the new infection rate for the people younger than 5 years old is less than 0.32%. But still, at the moment, we are having more than 100 million, people living with hepatitis. So that's the status for China. At the moment, we are still having like 400 million people, living in chronic, liver disease, including, liver cancer, fatty disease and stuff like that. And of course, hepatitis B and hepatitis C. So it's such a huge bump on the in the road for China to achieve the hepatitis elimination. But how come we have such a challenge for us on the way to really understand what's going on in the hepatitis sector? But still, how come there's so many rumors, so sort of fake news in the sector? It came down to two different type of things. One is the lack of the public, education. Back then, 10 years ago, when we go to the factory, when we ask the people that the people in the factories, the workers, that what do you think of hepatitis? Is it a genetic disease, or maybe like a transmittable disease? Most of them, the accurate rate is, more than 65%. But now, yesterday, we do a small survey with more than 200 people in the factory. 85% of them are saying that it's genetic for the hepatitis B. So that's one thing, lack of the public education that really caused the stigma and discrimination. The second thing is the let me talk about it this way, that our country is ignoring the people living with hepatitis, but focusing with lots of resources thrown into the vaccines maybe for the hepatitis B, but leaving the people living with hepatitis B behind, that really causing a lot of issues like discrimination. So now suicides, discrimination in workplace is still everywhere. So yeah, I'm going to talk more about discussion.
Dee, thank you for that. And I'm not sure we're going to have time for a discussion, given our technological kind of challenges that we've been experiencing. And Liz, yes. Lien, we have 5 minutes for you.
Thank you very much, Jack and everyone. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I will make it in 5 minutes for sure. So it's more like I'm sharing my personal experience than other doing like any big thing. So hello everyone. So I am Lien Tran. I live with hepatitis B. That's like 150 million people in the Western Pacific. That's like nearly half of everyone living with Hep B in the whole world. I'm from Vietnam and now living in Australia. My grandmother died with cancer in 1990. This is my mom. She's 70 and taking antiviral treatment to prevent liver cancer from her hepatitis B. Here are my daughters. They are hepatitis B free. So I'm so glad that our family hepatitis B story stops at me. I found out I was living with hepatitis B when I was a first-year uni student in Vietnam, and I had to do a health screening before accepting a scholarship to study in Europe. That was a big deal. The diagnosis actually took away my opportunity to study overseas, so I stayed in Vietnam to study. Losing my scholarship was not the worst part of my diagnosis. The only thing I knew by that time about hepatitis is just it is a liver disease because hepatitis in Vietnam just sounds like liver inflammation. And because my grandmother passed away due to a liver cancer, so I thought I was getting there as well. But oddly enough, since I had no symptoms, I nearly forgot about my diagnosis. A few years later, I started researching on the internet and found out that I can live with hepatitis B. When I told my husband, then my boyfriend, about my status, I was met with empathy and acceptance. Even though he did not know much about the disease and was afraid of contracting it, he chose to love, not to stigmatize. Unfortunately, most people do not react with such acceptance. Therefore, I chose not to tell my friends, colleagues, in-laws, or anyone who was not at risk of contracting the disease from me in what I term it as my disclosure principles. It was proven valid because as once I heard a friend of mine was rejected and her boyfriend broke up with her upon her disclosing her diagnosis. So hepatitis B diagnosis can take away the opportunity to fight and keep love. And yeah, like Dee know that very clearly, and he has done an amazing job to support workers in China. Like many of them lost their jobs solely on their hepatitis diagnosis by their employer. That happens a lot in Vietnam too, especially for jobs in many industrial zones. So hepatitis B takes away opportunity to work and contribute. Because of hepatitis B, I lost my opportunity to study abroad previously. My friend lost her chance to love and be loved, and others lost their jobs. The elimination of hepatitis B and the cure for hepatitis B for me means opportunity. Yeah, so let's just come here. So not only clinical implications of prevention of liver cancer, or as Dr. Lim just said a bit earlier, but about our delight to stop the treatment that we really want to. We do not want to take the tablets every day for the rest of our life. But that's actually a hepatitis B cure is something more than that for us, for everyone living with Hep B. It will also be a cure for what Jack knows it really well, called the social illness of hepatitis B stigma. So in the interim, so I chose while we are waiting for the clinical cure, I'm speaking up for my fellows living with hepatitis B in the quest to combat the social illness. And today, in the celebration of the World Hepatitis Day and the spirit of hepatitis can wait, another day is passing by. Let's act together to make sure that people living with Hep B being diagnosed, being cared for both clinically and socially, so we'll be in our best shape when the cure arrives. So thank you. I think that's all.
Lien, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Nicely done. And Liz, my apologies. I mean, for the technological kind of problems, that means that we have run out of time for this. I would like to thank Sengji Lim, Margaret Hellard, Dee Lee, and Lien for their presentations. Lien, that was just a beautiful way of finishing the kind of the seminar, or as grounded in lived experience of people with hepatitis B. We will try and find a way of kind of putting the questions up somewhere in either the ICE HBV site and the CEVHAP site. I'm deeply grateful for everyone for participating, and again, apologise for things that I have no control over. And yes, we'll see you next year, I hope.